What if you could grow twice the vegetables in half the space while doing less work? The Amish have been quietly perfecting gardening techniques for over 300 years, creating abundant harvests without expensive fertilizers or complicated tools. These 35 time-tested secrets will transform your garden from struggling to thriving, saving you money and frustration while producing the best vegetables you've ever grown. Dirt that feeds plants. The Amish have been mixing their own soil recipes for centuries, combining compost, manure, and wood ash to create what they call living dirt. This isn't just regular soil that sits there doing nothing. Their mixture creates a powerhouse that feeds plants continuously throughout the growing season. The secret lies in the balance. 1 part aged manure provides nitrogen, while wood ash adds potassium and raises pH levels naturally. Compost brings beneficial microorganisms that break down nutrients into forms plants can actually absorb. A farmer once said his soil was so rich he had to warn his vegetables not to grow too fast or they'd scare the neighbors. Instead of buying expensive fertilizers every season, Amish families let their soil rest with cover crops like clover or rye during off-seasons. This practice dates back to their European ancestors who understood that healthy soil means fewer pest problems and vegetables that actually taste like something. Modern studies show that soil treated this way contains up to 3 times more beneficial bacteria than chemically fertilized ground. Seeds saved for generations. Every fall, Amish gardeners carefully select their best vegetables and save seeds for next year's planting. These aren't just any seeds. They're heirloom varieties that have been passed down through families for decades, sometimes over a century. Each seed carries genetic information that has adapted specifically to local soil conditions, weather patterns, and growing challenges. This natural selection process creates plants that are remarkably tough and resilient. These heirloom seeds have been through more family generations than some furniture, and they're definitely more useful than Great Aunt Martha's china cabinet. Store-bought hybrid seeds might produce beautiful vegetables the first year, but they won't reproduce true to type if you save them. Amish heirloom seeds, however, get stronger with each generation. A tomato variety that survived the harsh winter of 1978 passes that hardiness to its offspring. These seeds also save families significant money. The average gardener spends $40 to $60 annually on seeds, while Amish families spend virtually nothing after their initial investment. Weather-wise planting. Amish farmers don't check weather apps on their phones because they don't have them. Instead, they read natural signs that have guided successful planting for generations. They test soil warmth by walking barefoot in their fields at dawn. If the ground feels comfortable under bare feet, it's ready for warm season crops. Moon phases guide their planting schedule, with root crops going in during the waning moon when energy flows downward. Bird behavior provides another reliable indicator. When robins start pulling worms from the soil, it means the earth has warmed sufficiently for most seeds to germinate. Maple trees budding signals the end of hard frosts in their area. These natural calendars have proven more reliable than meteorologists over the long term. Cold-tolerant crops like peas and lettuce get planted early to maximize growing seasons, while heat-loving plants wait until all danger of frost has passed completely. Raised rows, not just beds. Most modern gardeners think in terms of raised beds, but Amish families create raised rows that sit just 3 to 6 inches higher than the surrounding ground. This subtle elevation makes an enormous difference in drainage, especially during heavy spring rains that can waterlog flat gardens. The raised design prevents root rot in crops like tomatoes and peppers that hate wet feet. Gardeners who plant in flat ground often end up growing rice by accident after a good thunderstorm. These raised rows also warm up faster in spring, extending the growing season by several weeks on both ends. Weeding becomes significantly easier because you can walk in the furrows between rows without compacting the planted areas. Some folks say raised rows are just regular gardens that went to finishing school. Amish gardeners shape these rows with simple hand tools, creating a slight crown that sheds water naturally. The technique works so well that many commercial farms have adopted similar practices, though they use tractors instead of hoes. Mulch mountains. Walk through an Amish garden and you'll see what looks like tiny mountain ranges made of straw, hay, or shredded leaves covering every inch of exposed soil. This mulch layer serves multiple purposes that modern gardeners often overlook. It holds moisture in the soil during dry spells, reducing watering needs by up to 70%. The organic material breaks down slowly, feeding soil organisms and adding nutrients throughout the growing season. Weeds can't germinate in darkness, so thick mulch eliminates most of the tedious hand-pulling that plagues other gardens. Earthworms thrive in the cool, moist environment under mulch, working around the clock to aerate soil and deposit their nutrient-rich castings. The Amish collect mulching materials from their own farms. Spoiled hay that's no longer good for livestock feed, leaves from their woodlots, and straw left over from grain harvests. Beans that climb on corn. The Three Sisters planting method represents one of agriculture's most elegant partnerships. Amish families plant corn first, letting it establish strong stalks that reach knee-high before adding beans around the base. The beans climb the corn stalks naturally, using them as living trellises while their roots fix nitrogen from the air and share it with their corn companions. Squash plants spread along the ground between the corn rows, their broad leaves creating shade that keeps soil cool and moist. Someone once said this arrangement works so well, the vegetables probably gossip about the weather while they grow. This companion planting maximizes space efficiency. 3 crops occupy the same footprint that might normally hold just one. The Three Sisters get along better than most actual siblings at family dinner. The system also provides natural pest control, as the strong scent of squash leaves deters many insects that would otherwise attack corn. Native Americans developed this technique thousands of years ago, and Amish settlers adopted it because it produces abundant harvests with minimal inputs. Each plant supports the others, creating a self-sustaining mini ecosystem. Cold frames for warm food. During the harshest winter months, Amish families continue harvesting fresh greens from simple wooden boxes topped with old windows or sheets of clear plastic. These cold frames function as mini greenhouses, trapping solar energy during the day and protecting plants from freezing at night. The temperature inside can be 20 to 30 degrees warmer than the outside air, allowing spinach, lettuce, and kale to grow even when snow covers the ground. Construction requires only basic carpentry skills, 4 wooden sides slanted to catch maximum sunlight, with hinges on the back edge for easy access. Many Amish families build cold frames using reclaimed materials from old buildings, keeping costs minimal while extending their growing season by months. The slanted design sheds rain and snow while positioning the glass at the optimal angle for winter sun. Vegetables grown this way often taste sweeter because cold stress concentrates sugars in the leaves. The frames can be positioned against south-facing walls or fences to capture maximum solar gain throughout the day. Ash instead of chemicals. Every wood-burning stove in Amish homes produces a valuable garden amendment that most people throw away. Wood ash contains significant amounts of potassium and phosphorus, essential nutrients for strong root development and fruit production. Amish gardeners save every scoop of clean ash from their heating stoves and spread it around root crops like carrots, beets, and potatoes in early spring. A wise farmer once noted that his fireplace was really just a fertilizer factory with a heating bonus. The alkaline nature of wood ash also raises soil pH naturally, which many vegetables prefer over acidic conditions. Wood ash is nature's way of recycling winter warmth into summer vegetables. Slugs and snails hate crawling over ash because it damages their soft bodies, providing chemical-free pest control around vulnerable seedlings. However, Amish families use ash sparingly. Too much can make soil overly alkaline and harm acid-loving plants like blueberries. They test their ash application by observing how plants respond rather than relying on expensive soil testing kits. Only clean wood ash should be used, never ash from treated lumber or painted materials. Kitchen waste isn't waste. Nothing edible leaves an Amish kitchen without first serving the garden. Potato peels, eggshells, coffee grounds, and vegetable trimmings all find their way into carefully managed compost piles, rather than garbage bins. This practice reduces household waste to almost nothing while creating rich organic matter that transforms ordinary soil into plant paradise. Eggshells provide calcium for tomatoes, preventing blossom end rot that ruins many home gardens. Coffee grounds add nitrogen and improve soil texture, making clay soils drain better and sandy soils hold more water. Even banana peels from the rare store-bought fruit get composted for their potassium content. The Amish approach composting methodically, layering brown materials like dried leaves with green kitchen scraps to maintain proper carbon-to-nitrogen ratios. This attention to balance prevents the sour smells that plague poorly managed compost piles while speeding decomposition. They also include crushed eggshells and wood ash in their compost mix to add essential minerals and maintain proper pH levels throughout the decomposition process. Planting by the moon. Amish farmers schedule their planting activities according to lunar phases, following traditions their grandparents brought from Europe. Root crops like carrots, beets, and radishes go into the ground during the waning moon when gravitational forces supposedly pull energy downward into developing roots. Leafy vegetables like lettuce and spinach get planted during the waxing moon when energy rises upward into stems and leaves. Skeptics might laugh, but it's hard to argue with Amish harvest baskets that could feed a small army. Scientific studies on lunar planting show mixed results, but many experienced gardeners swear by the practice. The moon has been giving gardening advice longer than any agricultural extension office. The moon's gravitational pull affects ocean tides, so it's not unreasonable to think it might influence water movement in plants and soil. Regardless of the mechanism, Amish families who follow lunar calendars consistently produce impressive yields. The practice also forces them to plan their gardening activities in advance rather than planting randomly whenever they have time. They often combine lunar timing with weather patterns and soil conditions for optimal results. Garlic for pest control. Smart Amish gardeners plant garlic cloves around the perimeter of their vegetable beds, creating aromatic barriers that confuse and repel many common pests. The sulfur compounds that give garlic its distinctive smell interfere with insects' ability to locate their preferred host plants. Aphids, cabbage worms, and even rabbits tend to avoid areas where garlic grows thickly. This natural pest control method provides a bonus harvest of garlic bulbs at the end of the growing season. Planted in fall, garlic cloves develop strong root systems before winter and emerge early in spring to begin their protective work. The plants require minimal care once established and actually improve with cold weather that would kill less hardy vegetables. Many insects that do venture into garlic-protected gardens seem less able to reproduce successfully, reducing pest pressure for the entire season. Chickens as garden helpers. Before planting season begins, Amish families turn their chickens loose in designated garden areas to perform natural soil preparation. The birds scratch vigorously through the soil, uprooting weed seeds and eating grubs, beetles, and other pest insects that would otherwise damage crops. Their constant scratching also aerates compacted soil better than any mechanical tiller. Chickens work for food instead of wages, making them the most affordable farmhands available. Chicken manure contains high levels of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, exactly what growing vegetables need most. The birds distribute their droppings evenly as they work, eliminating the need to spread fertilizer manually. These feathered employees never call in sick and always work overtime during bug season. However, Amish families move their chickens frequently using portable fencing, preventing them from over-fertilizing any area or eating newly planted seeds. Fresh chicken manure can actually burn plant roots, so they let it age in the soil for several weeks before planting begins. Double harvest tricks. Rather than planting everything at once and hoping for the best, Amish gardeners stagger their planting dates to ensure continuous harvests throughout the growing season. They plant lettuce every 2 weeks from early spring through late summer, guaranteeing fresh salad greens constantly rather than having everything mature simultaneously. Quick-growing crops like radishes fill gaps between slower vegetables, maximizing productivity from every square foot. Early peas planted in March finish producing by July, making room for late-season beans in the same space. Cool weather crops occupy garden beds during spring and fall, while heat-loving plants use the same areas during summer months. This succession planting requires careful planning and record keeping, but it can triple or quadruple the total harvest from a given garden area. Amish families often keep simple notebooks tracking which varieties perform best at different times. Crops that like each other. Experienced Amish gardeners know which vegetables grow better together and which combinations should never share the same garden bed. Tomatoes planted near basil not only taste better, but also suffer fewer pest problems. The basil's aromatic oils seem to enhance tomato flavor while repelling harmful insects. Cabbage family crops grow stronger and healthier when onions or garlic occupy nearby spaces. Plants apparently have better social skills than most people at dinner parties. However, some combinations create problems that can ruin entire harvests. Beans and onions planted too close together both struggle and produce poorly. The onions seem to inhibit nitrogen fixation by bacteria on bean roots. Even vegetables have frenemies. Some crops smile at each other while secretly stealing nutrients. Black walnut trees release chemicals that poison tomatoes, peppers, and potatoes planted anywhere near their drip line. Amish gardeners learn these relationships through observation and experience, passing successful combinations to their children while avoiding proven failures. Old barrels as rain catchers. Every Amish farmstead features several wooden barrels or large containers positioned to capture rainwater from roof gutters and downspouts. This collected water serves gardens better than municipal tap water because it's naturally soft and free of chlorine chemicals that can harm beneficial soil organisms. Rainwater also maintains the same temperature as the surrounding air, preventing shock to plant roots that can occur when cold well water hits warm soil. The average roof collects about 600 gallons of water from just 1 inch of rainfall, providing enough irrigation for substantial gardens during dry periods. Amish families position their barrels strategically around garden areas to minimize carrying distances when drought strikes. Simple wooden covers prevent mosquito breeding while allowing easy access for dipping watering cans. Some families connect multiple barrels with short pieces of pipe, creating storage systems that hold hundreds of gallons of free irrigation water. The pH of rainwater is naturally slightly acidic, which many garden plants prefer over alkaline well water. This collected water also contains trace minerals picked up from the atmosphere. Herbs that protect neighbors. Scattered throughout Amish vegetable gardens, aromatic herbs serve as silent guardians that protect their neighbors from pest damage. Dill plants attract beneficial insects like parasitic wasps that prey on cabbage worms, aphids, and other garden pests. The wasps lay their eggs inside pest insects, creating natural biological control that works around the clock without any human intervention. Apparently, herbs are the neighborhood watch program of the plant world. Marigolds planted around tomatoes release chemicals from their roots that kill microscopic nematodes in the soil, tiny worms that can devastate tomato crops by attacking root systems. French marigolds work especially well for this purpose and produce cheerful orange flowers as a bonus. These marigolds take pest control so seriously they work underground like floral secret agents. Nasturtiums serve as trap crops, attracting cucumber beetles and squash bugs away from valuable vegetables. The insects prefer nasturtium leaves and often ignore nearby crops completely. Many herbs also release volatile compounds that confuse pest insects and mask the scent of target plants. Shady corners matter. Most gardeners focus on sunny spots and ignore shaded areas, but Amish families recognize that partial shade extends growing seasons for many vegetables. Lettuce, spinach, and other leafy greens bolt to seed quickly in hot sun, but continue producing tender leaves for weeks longer when protected by light shade. They strategically plant tall crops like corn or sunflowers to cast shade over heat-sensitive vegetables during summer months. Shade also conserves soil moisture by reducing evaporation, which means less frequent watering and healthier plants during drought stress. Root vegetables like carrots and beets actually develop better flavor when their tops stay cool, even though their roots grow in full sun. Amish gardeners create shade using simple structures made from old sheets or burlap stretched between wooden posts, protecting valuable crops during the hottest part of summer. Partial shade can reduce soil temperature by up to 15 degrees, creating microclimates that support cool season crops even in midsummer heat. Simple crop rotation. Amish families never plant the same type of vegetable in the same garden bed 2 years running, following rotation principles that maintain soil health and control pest populations. Plants in the same family tend to attract similar pests and diseases while depleting the same soil nutrients, so moving them around confuses insects and balances soil chemistry naturally. Tomatoes, peppers, and potatoes all belong to the nightshade family and should never follow each other in the same location. Smart farmers treat their garden beds like hotel rooms. New guests every season keeps everyone happy. Legumes like beans and peas actually add nitrogen to soil through bacteria living on their roots, making them perfect predecessors for heavy-feeding crops like corn or cabbage. Root crops like carrots help break up soil compacted by previous plantings while scavenging nutrients from deep layers other plants can't reach. Crop rotation is basically musical chairs for vegetables, except everyone wins when the music stops. Amish gardeners keep mental maps of their rotation schedules, often planning 3 to 4 years ahead to ensure proper spacing between similar crops. This long-term planning prevents the buildup of soil-borne diseases and maintains optimal growing conditions year after year. Hand-picked pest control. Early morning finds Amish children and adults walking through garden rows with buckets of soapy water, manually removing pest insects before they can damage crops seriously. This labor-intensive approach works remarkably well because many garden pests are most active and visible during cool morning hours when they're sluggish and easy to catch. Colorado potato beetles, Japanese beetles, and tomato hornworms are particularly vulnerable to handpicking. The soapy water quickly kills collected insects while being completely safe around food crops and beneficial insects like bees and butterflies. This method requires daily attention during peak pest seasons, but eliminates the need for expensive and potentially harmful chemical pesticides. Children often compete to see who can collect the most bugs, turning pest control into a game while teaching them to recognize garden friend from foe. Compost pits in every yard. Every Amish household maintains at least one active compost pile where kitchen scraps, garden waste, and animal manures transform into rich soil amendment through controlled decomposition. These piles are carefully constructed in layers. Brown materials like dried leaves and straw provide carbon, while green materials like grass clippings and kitchen scraps supply nitrogen for the bacteria that drive the composting process. Good compost piles generate enough heat to cook an egg, though most people prefer using stoves for breakfast. Proper layering and occasional turning create temperatures between 130 to 160 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to kill weed seeds and harmful bacteria while preserving beneficial microorganisms. Amish families often maintain multiple compost piles in different stages of decomposition, ensuring a constant supply of finished compost for their gardens. These compost piles work harder than a coffee shop on Monday morning, brewing up soil nutrients around the clock. The process typically takes 6 months to a year, depending on materials used and weather conditions. Well-managed compost piles rarely smell bad and don't attract rodents or other unwanted visitors. Natural fertilizer tea. Amish gardeners create powerful liquid fertilizers by soaking plants like stinging nettle, comfrey, or even common weeds in water for several days until the mixture develops a strong smell. This fermented plant tea contains concentrated nutrients in forms that vegetables can absorb immediately through their roots and leaves. Nettle tea is especially rich in nitrogen, iron, and potassium, perfect for feeding heavy-feeding crops like tomatoes and corn. The brewing process takes place in wooden barrels or large containers placed away from living areas because the fermentation creates quite an odor. After straining out solid plant material, the concentrated tea gets diluted with water at ratios ranging from 1 part tea to 5 parts water for root feeding or 1 to 10 for foliar applications. Plants respond quickly to these organic fertilizer teas, often showing improved color and growth within days of application. Spacing crops just right. Amish gardeners plant their vegetables with mathematical precision, spacing each crop according to its mature size and root system requirements. Crowded plants compete for nutrients, water, and sunlight, making them weak and susceptible to disease problems. Plants spaced too far apart waste precious garden space and allow weeds to establish between crops. Getting the spacing exactly right maximizes both plant health and garden productivity. Plants are like people at a party. Too close together makes everyone uncomfortable. Too far apart makes conversation impossible. Different vegetables require dramatically different spacing. Lettuce plants can grow happily 6 inches apart, while tomatoes need at least 18 inches between plants and 3 feet between rows. Root depth also matters. Shallow-rooted crops like onions can share space with deep-rooted vegetables like carrots without competing directly. Proper plant spacing is like arranging a dinner party where everyone gets enough elbow room and dessert. Amish families often use homemade measuring sticks marked with appropriate distances for their most common crops, ensuring consistent spacing year after year. Watering deep, not often. Rather than sprinkling their gardens lightly every day, Amish families water thoroughly but less frequently, encouraging plant roots to grow deep into the soil where moisture stays available longer. Shallow, frequent watering creates lazy root systems that stay near the surface, making plants vulnerable to drought stress and requiring constant attention from gardeners. Deep watering sessions soak the soil to depths of 8 to 12 inches, providing moisture reserves that sustain plants for several days, even during hot weather. This approach builds drought tolerance naturally while reducing the total time spent on irrigation chores. Deep watering is like teaching plants to fish instead of just giving them fish. They learn to be self-sufficient. Amish gardeners often check soil moisture by pushing a finger or stick deep into the ground. If moisture appears at 6 inches depth, watering can wait another day or two. Morning watering allows plants to absorb moisture before heat increases evaporation rates. Deep-rooted plants are also more stable during storms and better able to access nutrients from lower soil layers. This watering method creates healthier, more resilient plants that require less maintenance throughout the growing season. Sand for carrots. Mixing coarse sand into heavy clay soil transforms impossible growing conditions into perfect carrot beds. Amish gardeners discovered this technique through necessity when their clay-heavy farmland produced nothing but twisted, stunted carrots that barely resembled the straight roots they needed for winter storage. Adding 1 part sand to 2 parts existing soil creates the loose, well-draining environment that allows carrots to grow straight and long without obstruction. The Amish joke that sand makes carrots polite because they finally learn to grow in straight lines. The sand improvement works by preventing soil compaction that forces carrot roots to twist around hard clumps of clay. Root vegetables need loose soil to expand properly. Compressed earth creates deformed, forked roots that are difficult to harvest and store poorly. This same sand mixture benefits other root crops like parsnips, turnips, and radishes. Coarse builder's sand works best because fine sand can actually make drainage worse by creating an impermeable layer. The investment in sand pays off for years because it permanently improves soil structure. The improved drainage also prevents root rot during wet seasons and allows for earlier spring planting when clay soils are still waterlogged. Root cellars for storage. Underground storage chambers built into hillsides or excavated beneath Amish homes maintain steady temperatures between 32 and 40 degrees Fahrenheit throughout winter months. These root cellars preserve harvested vegetables for 6 to 8 months without any artificial refrigeration, providing fresh food when gardens lie dormant under snow. The Earth's natural insulation keeps temperatures stable while allowing enough air circulation to prevent rot and spoilage. Construction requires digging into a hillside or creating a basement room with thick stone or concrete walls. Proper ventilation comes from intake vents near the floor and exhaust vents near the ceiling, creating air circulation that removes excess moisture while maintaining ideal humidity levels. Different vegetables require specific storage conditions. Potatoes need complete darkness to prevent sprouting, while cabbages prefer slightly higher humidity. Root cellars can store up to 500 pounds of vegetables in a space smaller than most modern closets. Cabbages that keep longer. Late-season cabbage harvesting requires perfect timing to maximize storage life through winter months. Amish families wait until after several light frosts have sweetened the heads, but harvest before hard freezes damage the outer leaves. They select only the firmest, most solid heads for long-term storage, using looser cabbages immediately for fresh eating or sauerkraut making. Smart farmers say cabbages are like teenagers. They last longer when hanging out with friends in cool, dark places. The traditional storage method involves braiding the entire plant, roots and all, then hanging these braided strings from rafters in unheated sheds or barns. This technique keeps cabbages fresh for 4 to 6 months by maintaining proper moisture levels while preventing direct contact between heads. Some families wrap individual cabbages in newspaper before hanging, adding another layer of protection against moisture loss. Properly stored cabbages remain crisp and flavorful well into spring, providing fresh vitamin C during the season when other vegetables are scarce. Pumpkins in the cornfield. Utilizing space beneath tall corn stalks, Amish farmers plant pumpkin seeds that sprawl across the ground without interfering with corn growth. This partnership maximizes land use efficiency while providing natural weed suppression as pumpkin vines cover bare soil with their broad leaves. The corn stalks offer light shade that prevents pumpkin leaves from burning during intense summer heat, while the pumpkins help retain soil moisture for both crops. Timing is critical for this companion planting system. Corn gets planted first and reaches knee-high before pumpkin seeds go into the ground around the stalks. This head start ensures the corn establishes its root system before competition begins. The pumpkin vines naturally grow outward from the corn rows, creating living mulch that suppresses weeds and cools the soil. By harvest time, families collect both corn for winter feed and storage, plus pumpkins for pies, soups, and livestock feed. This dual-purpose planting can increase total food production per acre by 30 to 40%. Cold water for radishes. Temperature shock treatment produces the crispiest, most flavorful radishes by using ice-cold well water for irrigation during the final weeks before harvest. Amish gardeners noticed that radishes watered with cold water from deep wells develop better texture and sharper flavor than those receiving warm surface water or rain. The cold water stress triggers the plants to concentrate sugars and develop thicker cell walls, resulting in radishes that snap cleanly when bitten. Cold water therapy works better on radishes than it does on most people's morning attitudes. This technique works best when applied during the last 2 weeks of the growing cycle, after radish roots have reached near mature size. The shock stimulates the plants to harden their tissues as a survival response, similar to how cold weather improves the flavor of many vegetables. Well water typically maintains temperatures between 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit year-round, providing the consistent cold treatment that produces premium radishes. Market gardeners often use this technique to command higher prices for their exceptionally crisp radish crops. Clover for living carpet. Between vegetable rows and in pathways, Amish families establish white clover ground cover that serves multiple purposes throughout the growing season. The nitrogen-fixing bacteria living on clover roots continuously enrich the soil, eliminating the need for expensive fertilizer applications while providing a natural source of nutrients for nearby vegetables. Bees thrive on clover blossoms, increasing pollination rates for crops that depend on insect activity. The low-growing clover prevents soil erosion during heavy rains and suppresses annual weeds that would otherwise compete with vegetable crops. When mowed regularly, the clipped clover provides fresh organic matter that can be left in place as natural mulch or collected for composting. This living carpet remains green throughout most of the growing season, creating attractive pathways that don't become muddy during wet weather. White clover establishes easily from seed and spreads naturally, requiring minimal maintenance once established. The system provides continuous soil improvement while reducing labor and external inputs. Dry beans, stored in jars. Harvest timing determines the success of bean storage through winter months. Amish families wait until bean pods rattle when shaken, indicating the seeds inside have dried to proper moisture levels of 12 to 15%. Picking too early results in beans that mold in storage, while waiting too long risks losing the crop to rain or early frost damage that ruins seed quality. Bean storage jars get more attention than most people's retirement planning and probably last longer too. After harvest, beans dry completely on screens or cloth in well-ventilated areas for several weeks before final storage. Glass jars with tight-fitting lids prevent insect damage and moisture absorption that can spoil entire batches. Some families add bay leaves or diatomaceous earth to storage containers as natural insect deterrents. Properly dried and stored beans maintain their nutritional value and cooking quality for 2 to 3 years. A single mature bean plant can produce up to half a pound of dried beans, making this crop extremely efficient for winter protein storage. Squash. That guards soil. Large winter squash varieties like Hubbard and Butternut create natural soil protection with their sprawling vines and enormous leaves. Amish gardeners plant these space-hungry crops in areas where they can spread freely without interfering with other vegetables, often along fence lines or at garden edges where their wandering growth habit becomes an advantage rather than a problem. The huge leaves shade the ground so completely that weeds cannot germinate beneath them, eliminating cultivation and weeding in areas that might otherwise require constant attention. This living mulch also prevents soil moisture from evaporating during hot summer weather, reducing irrigation needs for the entire garden. As the season progresses, the heavy vines help compact the soil surface, creating pathways that remain firm even during wet weather. Winter squash can store for 6 to 12 months when harvested properly, providing fresh vegetables throughout the cold season when other crops are unavailable. Onion cures in the loft. Proper curing transforms fresh onions into storage-ready bulbs that last 8 to 10 months without sprouting or rotting. Amish families harvest onions when 2/3 of the green tops have yellowed and fallen over naturally, indicating the bulbs have reached full maturity and begun their natural dormancy process. They pull the entire plant, including roots, and lay them on the ground for several days to begin the curing process. Well-cured onions have better storage manners than most house guests. They stay fresh longer and never overstay their welcome. The final curing happens in barn lofts or other spaces with good air circulation and protection from rain. Onions spread in single layers on screens or wooden floors develop the tough, papery skin that prevents moisture loss during storage. Proper curing requires 4 to 6 weeks of warm, dry conditions with temperatures between 70 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Onions cured too quickly or in humid conditions develop soft necks that allow bacteria to enter, causing rot that can spread through entire storage batches. Successfully cured onions feel firm and show no green growth at the neck area. Bees as quiet partners. Strategic beehive placement near vegetable gardens creates mutually beneficial relationships that boost both honey production and crop yields. Amish families position hives within easy flying distance of their gardens, typically no more than half a mile from major vegetable plantings. Bees improve pollination rates for crops like squash, cucumbers, and melons that depend entirely on insect activity for fruit production, often increasing yields by 50 to 70%. The partnership works both ways. Vegetable blossoms provide nectar and pollen that support healthy bee colonies, while extended blooming seasons from succession plantings give bees consistent food sources throughout the growing season. Gardens with nearby beehives produce more uniform fruit development and higher seed set in crops saved for next year's planting. Bee colonies also indicate environmental health, as these sensitive insects thrive only in areas free from harmful pesticides and chemical treatments. A single colony can pollinate crops across several acres, making beekeeping an efficient investment for serious gardeners. Clay pots for slow watering. Buried clay pots provide steady, slow-release irrigation that conserves water while maintaining consistent soil moisture around plant roots. Amish gardeners bury unglazed clay pots up to their necks between vegetable plants, then fill the pots with water that seeps gradually through the porous clay walls. This ancient technique delivers water directly to root zones while minimizing evaporation and surface runoff that wastes precious water during dry periods. Lazy gardeners discovered that clay pots work harder than they do, delivering water around the clock without complaining. The porous clay allows water to seep out slowly over several days, creating a moisture reservoir that plants can access as needed. This method works especially well for tomatoes, peppers, and other deep-rooted crops that benefit from consistent moisture levels. A single buried pot can provide adequate irrigation for plants within a 3-foot radius, reducing watering frequency while preventing the water stress that causes blossom end rot and fruit cracking. The technique uses up to 70% less water than surface irrigation methods while producing healthier, more productive plants. Saving best seeds for tomorrow. Seed selection determines the future success of Amish gardens, so families choose only their strongest, most productive plants for seed-saving purposes. They mark exceptional plants during the growing season, noting characteristics like disease resistance, early maturity, and superior flavor that make certain individuals worth preserving. These selected plants receive extra care and protection to ensure they reach full seed maturity. The saved seeds carry genetic traits that have proven successful in specific local conditions, creating varieties that improve with each generation of selection. Plants grown from locally adapted seeds often outperform commercial varieties by 20 to 30% because they've evolved to thrive in particular soil and climate conditions. Proper seed processing, drying, and storage requires attention to detail, but the investment pays dividends for decades. Families that have saved seeds for generations possess genetic resources worth hundreds of dollars in commercial equivalents while maintaining varieties that may no longer exist anywhere else in the world. Hay bale mini greenhouses, the rectangular structures scattered through Amish gardens in early spring, might look like misplaced hay bales, but they're actually ingenious mini greenhouses that extend growing seasons by 2 months or more. These temporary structures cost less than $20 each to build, yet perform nearly as well as expensive commercial options. Construction begins with standard hay bales arranged in a rectangle, creating insulated walls. A simple frame of bent PVC pipe or flexible branches spans the top, supporting clear plastic sheeting. The resulting structure captures solar energy while blocking wind and maintaining humidity. Hay does 2 jobs, said an Amish farmer while adjusting his bale greenhouse. It walls off the cold and feeds the plants as it slowly breaks down. The secret to these structures' effectiveness lies in the natural properties of hay. As outer portions of bales begin decomposing, they generate slight warmth while releasing nutrients that feed plants inside. The walls provide approximately R20 insulation value, comparable to standard house walls. Temperature monitoring reveals these simple structures maintain internal temperatures 25 to 30 degrees Fahrenheit above outside readings on sunny days. Even nighttime temperatures typically stay 10 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than the surrounding environment. My first hay bale greenhouse worked beautifully until a family of field mice decided it made a perfect winter condominium. Their tunneling weakened the structure until one side dramatically collapsed during a family dinner party. My Amish friends suggested adding peppermint oil to future bales. Mice apparently hate the smell, while plants benefit from the aromatic compounds. Root cellar storage principles. The unassuming doors built into north-facing hillsides throughout Amish country hide one of their most important food preservation tools: root cellars that keep vegetables fresh through winter without refrigeration. These underground spaces maintain the ideal temperature and humidity for long-term storage through clever design rather than technology. Traditional Amish root cellars maintain temperatures between 32 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit and humidity levels of 85 to 95% year-round. Perfect conditions for storing root crops, apples, cabbage, and winter squash. This stability comes from working with natural physics rather than fighting it. The earth remembers summer slowly, explained an elderly Amish farmer while touring his impressive cellar. It holds that coolness well into spring if you don't let hot air inside. The design principles follow strict rules. North-facing entrances avoid direct sun exposure. Double-door entries create airlocks. Ventilation pipes control humidity, and specific vegetables are stored separately to prevent ethylene gas transfer between crops. Root cellars work through Earth's thermal mass properties. The surrounding soil maintains a consistent temperature approximating the annual average for that location. In most northern areas, this means perfect storage temperatures with zero energy input. My attempt to create a mini root cellar under my porch steps was partially successful, but taught me hard lessons about rodent protection. What I hadn't sealed properly became a squirrel's winter paradise, complete with my carefully stored carrots. When I complained to my Amish neighbor, he laughed and asked if I'd considered getting a cat before building my squirrel feeding station. Succession planting calendar. Keeping track of planting dates on scraps of paper or trying to remember when to sow the next crop is a recipe for garden chaos. Enter the Amish succession planting calendar, a remarkable system that ensures continuous harvests from early spring until winter's first hard freeze. While visiting an Amish community in Pennsylvania, I discovered how they maintain their detailed planting schedules. Each family maintains a calendar book showing exactly when to plant each crop, based on both calendar date and natural indicators like soil temperature or the blooming of certain wildflowers. "Plants tell us when to plant better than any calendar," explained the gardener, pointing to flowering dogwood trees. "When those bloom, it's time for beans, no matter what date it is." The system works through carefully timed plantings every 10 to 14 days, with new seedlings ready to replace harvested crops. By maintaining this rhythm, garden beds never sit empty, maximizing production from limited space. My color-coded version of this system became unexpectedly popular in my neighborhood. What started as my personal garden guide now has several neighbors requesting copies each spring. It transformed my sporadic harvests into a steady stream of vegetables. Research from market gardeners shows properly implemented succession planting can increase overall yields by 30 to 40% from the same space. The Amish version goes further by incorporating companion planting principles, ensuring that successive crops benefit rather than deplete the soil. Three Sisters, vertical gardening. Native Americans invented it, but Amish farmers perfected it. The Three Sisters planting method combines corn, beans, and squash in a remarkable symbiotic growing system that creates a living trellis while maximizing space and nutrition. This clever technique produces 20% more calories per square foot than modern monocropping. The corn stalks provide natural supports for climbing beans, which fix nitrogen that feeds the corn and squash, while sprawling squash leaves shade the soil and deter raccoons with their prickly stems. "It's like the plants agreed to help each other," said an Amish gardener as he demonstrated his Three Sisters plot. "Each does a job the others need." The method requires specific spacing, corn planted in hills 4 to 6 feet apart, with beans added when corn reaches 6 inches tall, and squash planted between hills about a week later. The result resembles a living jungle of food rather than tidy garden rows. Researchers studying traditional farming methods found that Three Sisters plantings reduce pest problems by 50% compared to single crop plantings. The diversity confuses insects that typically target monocultures. My first attempt taught me a painful lesson about timing. Planting everything simultaneously created a disaster. Beans strangled corn seedlings, while squash smothered everything. When I explained my failure to an Amish friend, he couldn't stop laughing. "You invited all Three Sisters to dance at once," he said. "Of course they stepped on each other's feet. Next time, introduce them one at a time." Blossom end pruning. Watching an Amish gardener systematically removing early flowers from his tomato plants initially shocked me. Why remove the very blooms that would become tomatoes? This counterintuitive practice, blossom end pruning, actually increases total yield by helping plants establish stronger root systems before fruit production begins. "Plants are like children," the elderly Amish gardener explained. "If they start working too young, they never reach their full strength." The technique involves removing all blossoms for the first 2 to 3 weeks after transplanting. This forces energy into root and foliage development rather than premature fruiting. Plants pruned this way produce their first tomatoes later, but continue producing significantly longer, with total yields increasing 25 to 30%. Beyond increased production, blossom-pruned plants develop better disease resistance and drought tolerance thanks to more extensive root systems. The difference becomes particularly noticeable during summer stress periods when unpruned plants often succumb to diseases while pruned plants continue thriving. My father called it plant torture when he first saw me removing tomato blossoms. He complained I was destroying perfectly good future tomatoes. By August, when his plants had finished producing while mine were still going strong, he changed his tune completely. "I've been growing tomatoes wrong for 40 years, he admitted grudgingly. "Who knew you had to be mean to be kind?" A Cornell University study confirmed what Amish gardeners have known for generations. Early pruned tomato plants produce approximately 12 to 15 pounds more fruit per plant over the growing season. Square foot, intensive planting. The geometric patterns visible in Amish vegetable gardens aren't just for appearance. They represent a sophisticated space maximization system that can triple production from small areas. Square-foot gardening divides growing spaces into precise grids where plants are positioned according to mathematical spacing formulas. "Every inch grows something," explained an Amish gardener while showing me her meticulously planned beds. Each square foot contained different numbers of plants based on mature size. 1 broccoli plant per square, 4 lettuce plants, 9 bean plants, or 16 carrots. This intensive planting relies on exceptionally rich soil to support such density. Amish gardeners typically prepare these beds with a specific soil mixture: 1/3 compost, 1/3 peat moss, and 1/3 vermiculite or coarse sand. This blend provides perfect drainage while holding nutrients and moisture. The system works through careful timing and placement. Tall plants are positioned on northern sides to avoid shading shorter varieties. Quick maturing crops grow alongside slower ones, allowing multiple harvests from the same square over a season. When properly implemented, square-foot gardening can produce vegetables for a family of 4 in just 100 square feet of space. This efficiency explains why Amish families with limited land can still grow nearly all their own produce. My attempt at square-foot gardening taught me the importance of proper spacing. Ignoring the guidelines, I crammed twice the recommended plants into each square. The resulting overcrowding created such humidity that mildew destroyed half my crop. As my Amish neighbor tactfully noted, sometimes the space between plants matters more than the plants themselves. Scatter hair. Around the garden. You know those hair clippings your barber sweeps up? Don't laugh, but they're garden gold. When my Uncle Frank first told me to scatter hair around my vegetable patch, I thought he'd finally lost it after 50 years of gardening. Turns out, he was onto something brilliant. Hair works like a magical fence for your garden. Deer and rabbits catch one whiff of human scent and think danger before hightailing it away from your precious carrots. My neighbor spent hundreds on fancy repellents while I just asked my wife to save her hairbrush cleanings. Guess whose lettuce stayed unbite? What's even more fascinating is that hair is about 15% nitrogen by weight. That's higher than chicken manure. As it breaks down, it slowly releases nutrients into your soil, feeding your plants for months. A study from the University of Florida found gardens using hair as fertilizer showed a 27% increase in vegetable yields compared to untreated plots. The simplicity is what makes this hack so brilliant. Just sprinkle hair clippings around plants or mix them into your soil. I keep a jar by our bathroom sink, and whenever anyone cleans their brush, in it goes. One older gardener I met has been doing this for 60 years. "Plants don't care if it's a bad haircut," he told me with a wink. "They'll eat it up either way." Partial shade. Mapping. Not all garden spots are created equal, explained the Amish gardener while showing me his elaborate hand-drawn yard map covered with sun-tracking notations. This careful shade mapping technique transforms challenging, partially shaded areas into productive growing spaces through strategic plant placement. The method requires patience. For one full growing season, Amish gardeners observe and record exactly when each garden section receives sunlight. Using simple tools, usually stakes and string, they track shadow patterns across days and seasons. The resulting maps show precisely how many hours of direct sun each spot receives. Armed with this knowledge, they match plants to appropriate locations. Areas with morning-only sun might grow leafy greens, while spots with afternoon exposure suit heat-loving crops like tomatoes and peppers. Let the plant fit the place, not the other way around, the gardener advised. Fighting nature is exhausting and usually unsuccessful. My own shade mapping project produced surprising results. What I assumed was a useless corner turned out to receive perfect morning sun for salad greens. After 3 seasons of documented observations, my hand-drawn yard map became remarkably accurate. Research from urban gardening initiatives shows that properly mapped and planted partial shade gardens can achieve 75 to 80% of the productivity of full sun plots when appropriate varieties are selected. This efficiency allows Amish families to utilize nearly every inch of their limited garden spaces, even those that receive as little as 4 to 5 hours of direct sunlight. Start seedlings in eggshells. Those empty eggshells after your breakfast? Don't toss them. They're nature's perfect seed starting pots. The humble eggshell contains around 95% calcium carbonate, making it a powerhouse for growing seedlings. Unlike plastic containers that end up in landfills, these natural pods break down and feed your soil. Getting started couldn't be easier. Just crack your eggs at the wider end, rinse the shells, and poke a small drainage hole in the bottom. Fill them with seed-starting soil, plant your seed, and place them back in the egg carton. Instant mini greenhouse. When your seedlings are ready for the garden, forget all that careful root ball handling. Simply gently crush the bottom of the shell and plant the whole thing. The roots will grow through the cracks while the shell continues to release calcium. My grandmother swore by this technique for her tomatoes. The calcium prevents blossom end rot, she'd say. She wasn't just spouting old wives' tales. Research shows calcium-deficient soil causes that ugly black spot on the bottom of tomatoes. I once brought some eggshell seedlings to a community garden event, and an older gentleman laughed. "Son, I've been doing that since before you were an egg yourself." The best part? Each little shell adds approximately 2.2 grams of calcium to your soil as it breaks down. Exactly what those growing plants are hungry for. Save and dry seeds from top plants. Why pay for new seeds when your garden is already producing them for free? The secret to a thriving garden year after year lies right in your existing plants. Did you know that commercial seed companies typically test less than 400 plants when developing new varieties? Meanwhile, Amish gardeners have been selecting seeds from thousands of individual plants each season for generations. This natural selection creates varieties perfectly adapted to your specific growing conditions. The trick is to mark your star performers: the tomato plant that laughed at the drought, the cucumber that stayed disease-free when others didn't, or the pepper plant that produced until frost. These garden champions hold genetic gold. Wait until the fruit is fully mature, even overripe for some vegetables. For tomatoes, that slimy goop surrounding the seeds contains germination inhibitors that actually prevent them from sprouting too early. Scoop them out, rinse, and spread on a paper towel. My first attempt at seed saving left me with a moldy mess. The old-timer next door took one look and chuckled, "Seeds are like good wine. They need proper aging, not proper aging." Store your dried seeds in paper envelopes in a cool, dark place. Label them with the variety and year. Your memory isn't as reliable as you think. Trust me, I once planted what I thought were bell peppers and ended up with a garden full of habaneros. My wife still brings it up whenever I get too confident about dinner plans. Compost kitchen scraps. Your garbage might be eating better than your garden. Those banana peels, coffee grounds, and apple cores you're tossing away, they're actually premium plant food in disguise. The average American family throws away nearly 32% of the food they buy. That's not just money in the trash, it's wasted gardening gold. Amish gardens thrive because nothing goes to waste. Starting a compost pile is simpler than making a sandwich. Find a corner of your yard and layer your kitchen scraps with dried leaves, grass clippings, or shredded newspaper. The magic ratio is roughly 3 parts browns, dry materials, to 1 part greens, kitchen scraps. What happens next is like a miracle. Microscopic creatures, billions of them, throw a massive dinner party in your compost pile. They break down everything into rich, dark humus that gardens absolutely crave. A tablespoon of finished compost contains more living organisms than there are people on Earth. My first compost pile heated up so much steam was rising off it in the winter. My wife walked out, saw the steam, and yelled, "The yard's on fire!" I told her, "No, dear, that's just last month's potato peels cooking themselves into garden vitamins." The best part? Compost-enriched soil holds water better, saving you money on your water bill while growing vegetables with up to 40% more nutrients than those grown with synthetic fertilizers. Natural twine trellis. Weaving. Store-bought garden trellises collapse under heavy vines, but the hand-woven twine supports created by Amish gardeners withstand even summer thunderstorms that flatten metal cages. The secret isn't high-tech materials, it's ancient weaving patterns that distribute weight perfectly. These trellises begin with a simple framework of wooden stakes driven securely into the ground. What makes them exceptional is the intricate weaving pattern using homemade cordage created from natural materials. Common fibers include stripped dogbane bark, nettle stems, yucca leaves, or even repurposed baling twine. "Nature's materials flex but don't break," said an Amish woman as she demonstrated her diamond pattern weaving technique. Unlike rigid metal supports that bend permanently when overloaded, natural fiber trellises stretch slightly under pressure, then return to their original tension when stress reduces. The weaving pattern matters tremendously. Simple crisscross strings provide minimal support, while the diamond pattern, where each intersection is secured with a special locking knot, creates remarkable strength through triangulation. This design principle distributes weight across the entire structure rather than concentrating stress at any single point. I attempted to recreate these trellises using store-bought twine, following the pattern exactly. To my surprise, they easily supported my heaviest tomato plants through several thunderstorms that destroyed my neighbor's metal cages. Laboratory testing reveals these traditionally woven structures can support up to 65 pounds per square foot, significantly outperforming commercial alternatives costing 20 times more. Even more impressive, these natural trellises become stronger in rain rather than weaker as natural fibers tighten when wet. Scrape fingernails over soap before gardening. Ever spent 20 minutes scrubbing dirt from under your fingernails after gardening? This clever trick will change your life. Before heading out to the garden, take a bar of soap and run your fingernails across it. Push them slightly into the soap so it fills the space beneath each nail. This creates an invisible barrier that prevents dirt from getting packed under there in the first place. The science behind this is surprisingly simple. Soap molecules have two ends, one that attracts water and one that repels it. When packed under your nails, these molecules form a protective shield. The dirt literally can't stick to your nails because the soap is already there. An Amish gardener taught me this trick when I complimented her perfectly clean hands after watching her transplant an entire bed of strawberries. She laughed and said, "I may love dirt in my garden, but I don't need to wear it to dinner." This neat hack dates back to the 1800s when women would use it while doing laundry by hand. Even surgeons used a similar technique before rubber gloves were invented in 1889. They'd scrub their nails with soap and iodine to create a barrier against germs. My wife tried this once with her fancy lavender soap. She came inside smelling like a garden center gift shop. Now she keeps a special bar just for gardening. No sense wasting the good stuff on the worms. These 35 time-tested techniques prove that the best gardening wisdom comes from generations of practical experience, not expensive products. The Amish have spent centuries perfecting methods that work with nature instead of fighting against it.